football. I don't care. We are doing a special edition of Falconcast today with my good friend Chris Dell, who I'm pretty sure was busy last night handling Steelers coverage as they played the Falcons. I watched that game, and it was the Falcons feed, right? And they're like, oh, this is the Steelers 1s versus our 2s and 3s. It's like, shut up. You guys suck. You're the Falcons. What the hell?
Yeah. The Steelers are undefeated now, Fred. What are you talking about?
Oh, yeah. 3-0 preseason. You know what that means? Absolutely nothing. So I'm gonna apologize to everybody today if I look a little peakish because I mentioned this on the podcast yesterday. I've been in bands since I was 13 years old. Every time we have a headlining gig the day before, I can't stop throwing up. It's just pure nerves. And so I've been throwing up since I couldn't sleep last night. I've been throwing up since about 6 this morning. And poor Kira has just been laying next to me like, hey, is there any food in there for me? And, so if I look a little peakish, that's why. And it never changes. I mean, it's just so weird that, like, if I'm just opening for somebody, it never bothers me. But when we're the headliner the day before, I mean, I am just so nervous. I can't remember the words to the songs. I'm just like sitting here going, oh God, I'm going to forget this. I'm going to forget that. And while we're headlining, it's not a big gig. I mean, we're doing 13 songs, but I'm only singing 10 and doing a guitar solo. So it's not really that big of a deal. And it's just in my head. And then tomorrow I'll just be numb all day. And then when we play that first note, I'm fine. It's like nothing ever happened, but I can't explain it. It's been this way my whole life. And, I'm 58 now and I've been doing this since I was 14. So you can do the math on that. And it's just, I know it's coming. And I think maybe now it's just psychological, right? And I know I'm going to get all nervous and stuff, but, and the added part of it is you never know if it's your last show at this point. I mean, at my age, I could die tomorrow. You never know if it's your last show. So you want your last one to be something people talk about. So, yeah. Chuck D's in the house. And you guys on Twitch, if you got questions for us, we're going to talk a little fantasy football. So, Chris, I'm in a league that I've pretty much dominated, except for last year when I made the mistake of drafting Russell Wilson. But I took Justin Fields late, and I damn near made the playoffs, when I put him in. But I told them, for like a month, whatever day you choose, I'll do, except for the 26th. I got a big concert. I got to help run the thing. And guess what? They picked the 26th. So I'm going to have to do it on my phone while I'm helping do setup and stuff like that. So I don't know what kind of draft I'll have. But I actually like where I am. I have the 6th pick. And I wanted to start with, where's the best place to be? Because I don't really want the top 3 picks. Mainly because you have to wait so long for your second pick in the snake draft. And, boy, your whole season's tied to whoever you take, right? If they blow a knee, you're screwed. So ideally, where would you like to be?
Are we talking just a standard, like 10 or 12 man? How many people in your league?
Let's say 12-team league, snake draft, standard. PPR.
It's a good question. Yeah, it's a good question because, like you said, if you're in a 12-team league, that's mostly what I do for my home leagues. You're talking about 24 picks in between, right? Until you make your second and third back to back. But I kind of prefer. It's weird because normally in the past I like to be right at the end because I like getting those back to back picks early and then waiting for 3 more picks late. But this year, the way that the rankings shift out and the ADP, right, the average draft position, I kind of like somewhere between like that 6 to 8, 5 to 8, like middle round pick, because then you can come back in the second round and get guys like Tony Pollard, Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley. I think those guys could all finish as the number 1 running back in fantasy, even above CMC and Eckler. But like, if you have a top 4 pick, you're almost like handcuffed to be like, I have to take one of those top 2 running back. So I would say specifically just the way the top 25 or so rankings play out this year, my preference would be to be in the middle of the first round with one of my picks somewhere between 5 to 8, or give or take.
Yeah, because if you're in that top 4, then it's not just the running backs. A lot of people are going to want to take Jamar Chase. They're going to want to take Justin Jefferson or Travis Kelce. And you can have those guys as far as I'm concerned, that high. Go ahead and take them that high. because I feel like my strategy going in most of the time, and please critique this because you're a genius at this. I like to get a stud running back early if I can. And like if Chubb or Eckler's sitting there at 6, I'm probably going to take him. And then with the second pick, if there's another guy that I like a Barkley or somebody like that slips, I like to load up the running backs first and then hit receivers, because the receiver position to me, I've always been good at just sniffing guys out that are going to have big years, right? And I think that, I don't need Jefferson or Chase. I can get, there's several guys I can get in that third and fourth round and try to build running back, receiver first, and then I don't worry about quarterback until later, because the only time I've ever made a mistake with a quarterback was Russell Wilson last year, and you can find like to me, if I get Anthony Richardson in the 11th round, that's a guy the second half of the season may help me win the league. So
Yeah.
that's kind of my approach to it.
Just kind of put context around it. I agree with a lot of what you just said. So I wrote my first column for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, where I'm the new sports editor, but they also brought me on to lead up our new fantasy football initiative, which they hadn't covered in a while. They've been wanting to get back into that space. And obviously with my experience in the sports betting with you, Fred, and then also with fantasy, those things go hand in hand. So my first column, the whole point was to kind of write a series of articles of players I liked at each position. But I was like, you know what? We got to talk about the 10 commandments of fantasy football, because it's such a sacred ritual that all of us partake in every single year when it comes to our drafts. And it sounds like to me that your league might be conspiring against the former champion there, who makes their fantasy drafts on Saturday, man. We got stuff to do. We got to go out and smell the roses, smell the grass, man.
Oh, I know they did it on purpose. Last year is the first time I've missed the playoffs. I've been in this league 5 or 6 years. I've won it 2 or 3 times. And so, yeah, I know damn well they're conspiring. And I'm like, you know what? Fine. I'll just do it on the phone while we're setting up the stage. Okay? No worries.
Right. As far as I'm concerned, Guns N' Roses, we're right here in downtown Pittsburgh. Guns N' Roses just performed right down the block at PNC Park. And those guys are going to be performing until they're like 100. So you got at least another half century left in you, Fred. So, but no, yeah.
No, I hope I have 20 years left. That would be cool.
There you go. We'll take that for now. But no, my whole point of the 10 commandments of fantasy was how are we supposed to have fun but also be competitive and try to win money at the end of the day? And you got to be flexible. You got to be willing to adapt. I say you should never go into a fantasy draft with a strategy of how you want to take your picks round and round, because what you really want to do is you want to take advantage of your opponent's mistakes, because all of a sudden you get a guy that falls to you at pick 20 where, let's say, Saquon Barkley should have been in the top 12. He falls to pick 20 because people are afraid of his contract. That's when you take advantage of public misconceptions in the market and you pounce on that as an owner. So you have to be willing to adjust your strategy and be flexible no matter what round you're in. But I will say the one rule that I have for myself personally every year is draft a rushing quarterback. Draft a quarterback who runs the ball.
Right.
It's just that, 7 of the top 10 quarterbacks in fantasy last year had at least 700 rushing yards. The only ones that didn't were Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, and one other guy. But Daniel Jones was in the top 10. He had over 700 rushing yards. Geno Smith was in there. He had about 300 to 400. So even those guys like Geno, Burrow, Mahomes, they're still rushing for 300-400 yards a season, which is why Fields is my favorite quarterback in fantasy this year. You can get him in the 4th or 5th round. He scored almost the same amount of points as Hurts and Allen did last year. And those guys, you got to draft in the 2nd round. So that's one of my things. Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, those 2 guys in the middle rounds could be absolute league winner type of steals. And you can stack all the positions early before you get to them. You can stack up your receiver, stack up your running back, get an elite tight end, and then take Daniel Jones in round 9, Anthony Richardson in round 10. I don't mind getting both those guys actually and keeping one on my bench. One of those 2 are going to pop off and finish at least in the top 5, in my opinion. So that's where I'm at when it comes to these rushing quarterbacks. I agree 100% with that.
No, I love that strategy. I've been doing that for years. And like I said, I got Justin Fields way late last year. and just stashed him because, I like I said, I thought Russell Wilson was going to carry me. And finally, about 5 games in, I'm like, no, I'm playing Justin Fields the rest of the way. This is, and this is how you win, because even though he might throw for 120 yards, but if he runs for 140 and scores 2 touchdowns, I mean, that's Mahomes' numbers. And, I think the common mistake that people make are they're going to draft Mahomes, they're going to draft Josh Allen way too high when you can get guys who can put up comparable numbers later down the road. And
too expensive, man. Jalen Hurts was a great pick last year. He was going in round 6.
Yeah.
You have to pay a price tag too high this year to get Jalen Hurts. So Justin Fields is the Jalen Hurts of 2023. I mean, he did in the second half of last year. He was the quarterback 3 in fantasy points per game. Quarterback 4 was Josh Allen. He averaged 4 full points per game less than Justin Fields did. And he's going 3 rounds ahead of Fields. It just doesn't make any sense. There's the public perception and opinion takes too long to change from season to season, and we just got to throw out those narratives, and we'll be able to take advantage as fantasy managers. And that goes with running backs too. Like, you don't need to draft just running backs early in drafts anymore. If you're playing in a half PPR, full PPR, point per reception, you got a point per catch type of format, then you actually need to win with your wide receivers. If you have elite wide receivers, you can't pick up elite wide receivers off the waiver wire during the course of a season.
Right.
But what you can do is you can pick up backup running backs whose starter ahead of them gets injured, and they can be elite fantasy running back options. So I say try to go receiver heavy in the early rounds, maybe get at least 1 elite running back, but don't use more than 2 of your top 4 picks on running backs, because you need those pass catchers to carry your team depending on what scoring format that you're in.
All right. I want to shout out to a few of the people who are listening to us today. Chuck D's here. Andrew Lanham, who's one of our great advertisers on the Falconcast. Joel Hernandez is here. On my way to F Your Bitch, who I just have to say I don't have one right now, but I'll get one if that'll help you. And King of All Twitches. So one of the things I wanted to ask, and then Mr. Get Me's here. He's also one of our great sponsors. So he'll be there tomorrow night as well. And if you're in Houston, please come out. And you'll get pictures taken with famous people. I got famous people there. Not me, of course, but we don't want to break cameras. But come on out, man. It's going to be a great event. And honestly, as nervous as I am today, Sunday's practice was the best our band has ever sounded. Now I was a little stoned, but I'll be a little stoned Saturday too. That's just how I have to go. But man, it's going to be a great, great show. You guys are going to love it. If you like, I describe it as we do covers of covers. So, if you like something you can sing along with, then you'll love this. So anyway, but getting back to fantasy. All right, so I'm just going to use mine as an example. I'm sitting at 6. Let's say there's a running back run before I go, and a Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson slips to 6. I take that, right?
Yeah, I haven't seen a single draft where one of those guys falls to 5 or 6, but absolutely. And the hardest thing in fantasy, and this is what people like. People think they have their opinions are worth something, but it's actually more strategic for you if you throw your personal opinions out the window and just draft based on value. Like if a guy's ranked as the number 5 player in fantasy going into drafts and he slips to pick number 15 or pick 10, more often than not, the market's going to be right and you're going to get that value there. So it's like the same thing when it comes to betting, right? Like we price shop at different books to try to get the best number. You're going to price shop every round of your fantasy draft to see what player. And yes, of course, like I have my guys that I like the most, but I'm not going to reach 2 rounds early for Justin Fields. I'm not going to reach a round early for Tony Pollard when I can get him in the 2nd round, and I don't need to do that because he's one of my favorite players too. So I think that's how you got to approach that. Of course, like if Jamar Chase is there, look, I'm rocking the Bengals, man. Jamar Chase is my guy, but if he falls to pick 5, of course I'm going to take him. But if I have the number 1 pick, I'm not going to take Chase because he's not the number 1 guy. That's Justin Jefferson kind of cut and dry this season. So, try to keep your personal player takes, at least half balanced with the actual average draft position and price shopping for the best value on these guys for your team.
Yeah, and but before I get to this, Chris is a genius bettor. I mean, we've worked together for a long time doing betting stuff, and you sent out a really profound tweet a little bit before the show about how don't take these individual overs on guys. And we've talked about this. I mean, there's so much that can go wrong. Guy tweaks an ankle and misses 2 games. He ain't going over. And I just think that's really good advice. And people don't want to bet unders. We've talked about this a lot. They don't want to see failure,
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, just, take the smart bet. But, yeah, explain that a little bit, and then we'll get back to fantasy because I just thought that was
the failure is losing your money and not getting your ticket back cash. I mean, that's the failure right there. So I don't care if a player goes, oh, yeah, look, I mean, when it comes to week props, I will bet overs. I will say that. I'm talking about these season-long props like, okay, look, like Zay Flowers, the rookie, drafted with first-round capital, came out in preseason, lighting the world on fire. In the preseason, he's gotten heavy usage. Like, his prop line was set at 500 yards. Like, that's something, yes, you can bet over on that. But it's got to be one of few overs you bet overall because injuries, not just to him. What if Lamar gets hurt? What if the offensive line gets hurt? What if the Ravens clinch a playoff berth in week 16 or 17, they rest their starters for a week or two? What if all of a sudden they start losing really bad and they shut everything down? There's so many outs to under cashing with these season-long props. But when you're talking about any prop that's like 1,000+ yards, like you're just you're looking for ways to lose when you bet the overs on season-long props like that. And look, like I respect ESPN as a media company, and I like that they're getting into sports betting. And I try to watch Daily Wager as much as I can. I really like the production value of it. It's a fun thing to have on in the background when I'm working. But I heard one of the analysts yesterday giving out Amon-Ra St. Brown like over 1,100 yards on the receiving prop. And unfortunately, there's actually real people betting stuff based off this show, just based on sheer numbers. And like, I just had to tweet that because, don't throw away your money that way. That's all I can say on that one, man.
No, I don't want to trash those guys either, but I will say this, and you and I have been in this business a long time, and we've seen it grow to where it's mainstream. And now that it's mainstream, there's so many people that just don't know what the hell they're talking about that have these high-profile jobs. And I'm not hating or anything. I'm just saying it's, we're like Knish and Rounders, man. We've taken the beats. We're giving you a playbook for life. And, none of these people, I mean, they just come into it and think, oh, well, I'm smart. I went to MIT. I should be able to know what I'm talking about. And it's like, the truth is, no, it's just like the guy that went to Harvard that I play poker with that thinks he's going to beat my ass every time. And I take his underwear every session. It's just, it's a different thing. And you have to understand it. You have to understand value. And it is the same thing with fantasy. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that give good fantasy advice, but they're also I don't want to say they're stiff, but they're kind of slaves to certain things. And to me, fantasy is like poker. You have to adjust on the fly. Every draft is like that. Every week is like that, and that's something you do as well as anybody. And it's just interesting to me to hear all these so-called experts and like, oh no, I'm sticking with Travis Kelce every single week. It's like, well, let's look at the matchups, And so I mean, I don't mean to be critical. I just think that it's unfortunate that maybe they don't have the background that they should have to be doing that. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, just say you and I both know we've been writers, we've been editors, and you could ask me tomorrow, hey, Chris, like, write me an article on betting the over for this season-long prop, and I can come up with a million reasons on why to bet the over because you know how to write, you know how to use logic and reasoning, but it doesn't mean it's the best piece of content or advice to put out there. So, content is king, and businesses have to make money based off traffic, and it's easier said than done to actually put out respectable betting content and transparency, because you have a lot, this is more of a different topic here, but as you and I both know from doing gallery sports with Mattress Mac and Sports Map Elite, betting predator stuff, is that at the same time, like, how do you have transparency in your picks? If you grow to a large enough company, media company, and you're doing betting content, if people follow your company or your site and you have, 10 cappers, 20 handicappers, how do you justify that to the reader saying, this is how we did? Oh, we have this one guy that did great. He hit 70%. Oh, but our other 5 NFL guys did horrible and lost a ton of money this year. So that means that probably the reader is losing money too, and you're out there touting and promoting the record of one guy. So it's there's not one perfect way to do it, but you have to find individuals and not just like umbrella companies. Like, oh, I love Action Network. Oh, I love ESPN. Like, oh, I love Betting Predators content. Like, but you have to know within that, like, who are the specific guys that you trust, because there are people putting out good, actionable information, but it can get lost in the weeds because, as you said, it's just the market is flooded, and we're only at half the amount of states in the country right now that have legalized sports betting. Man, it's like this is only the beginning. It's going to get way crazier over the next couple of years as other states start to legalize. So it's tough, but hopefully you can kind of find that silver lining and make sure that you're, treating it as entertainment value, but also like you can win money off this, even if it's just, kind of side money at the end of the day. You just got to know the right people to follow for it.
Well, it's just investing is what it is. And we've always tried to, and it's funny because like anybody in the stock market gets all pissed off when I'm talking about, no, sports betting is the same thing. I mean, we're looking for good investments is what we're doing. And you're gambling just like we're gambling. And it goes to fantasy football too. But the reality is, we don't do everything right. Don't pretend to. But we try to make the best decisions. And this always, like I said, it always goes back to poker. And I'm always going to be a poker player at heart. You make the best decisions based on the information you have. And sometimes that works out. Sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, you go back and look, hey, what did I do wrong here? And maybe I didn't do anything wrong. I mean, maybe it just was bad luck, because there is an element of that. I mean, somebody runs a pick six back in the last second to cover the spread. That's bad luck. You may have the game nailed, but then there's also times where you're just wrong. And when you are, you need to evaluate what you do. And it's a process that never stops. I mean, we always have to evaluate what we do. And by the way, I'm really excited. I'm going to be doing a weekly column for Betting Predators, which I think is awesome. Great site if you haven't checked it out. And Chris, like me, has got his fingers in a lot of pies. Although he has a real job now, but he also does Betting Predators, a lot of other stuff. And I've been a big admirer of his since we started working together. But to turn it back to fantasy, let's. I got 2 topics I want to hit on, and I want to start.
Okay.
I want to start.
Yeah, real quick, Fred, because like the thing you said about the bad luck, like not many people talk about when they actually have good luck and win a bet too. So you think about the bad luck, and usually it balances out, right? But you don't hear people saying, "Oh, I shouldn't have won that bet, but I won it anyways," and those things always wind up balancing out at the end of the day.
And we forget about that, right? I don't. Especially like I said, when it comes to poker, if I got pocket kings against aces and I spiked the king on the river, I'm gonna remember that. I'm like, dude, you got so lucky. Just take the pot down, and not that I did anything wrong. I mean, to shove with kings, that's what you're supposed to do. But you run into aces, that's bad luck to run into aces. And then it was good luck to spike the king. And it's the same thing with betting, right? It's like that pick six. If you wind up backdoor covering with a pick six, don't forget about that. Just remember, hey, you know what? I got lucky there. And that's okay, because the bets you win where you get lucky, you still learn from that.
Yes.
And that's important.
You have to.
Yeah, everything is a learning experience, and it has to be. And if it's not, then you're really not moving forward as a bettor. And that's the one thing that kind of frustrates me about seeing people on ESPN and CBS Sports, that they're not talking about the losses or the lucky wins. They're talking about, oh, look what I did. And I'm like, yeah, okay, we all do that. That's everybody I know does that. Come on.
I handle our premium packages for betting. It's not just me giving out picks for betting predators, but I do handle the golf myself, and I give out head-to-head matchup props. I'm part of the NBA props team that we have. I also do NFL player props too. That's what I first ever did when we first started a couple years back. And at this point, what I will tell you after 3 years of doing this, of not just betting myself, but actually giving bets to subscribers, people who are paying us for the information. And I respect them more than anything. And I'll tell people straight up, like in our Discord community where we distribute our picks, we have a community there, which you can find on our website. But when a bet loses because of bad luck, I'm actually happy about it because the process was there and you were right. And hey, look, like this was the right bet. 8 out of 10 times, this bet will win. And what I'd rather have a bet lose and the process was right out of some sheer dumb luck you lost than get on a hot streak and win like 4 or 5 bets that you shouldn't have because of good luck that went your way, because that changes the mindset in people to where like, oh, I'm just going to keep doing it this way because I'm winning. No, I'd rather lose 5 bets in a row that was just bad luck that I lost and the process was there than have it be the other way around. In the long run, you will be more profitable as a bettor because of that. But that's my biggest take on that type of stuff.
Well, 2 things about that. First off, this guy's golf props, holy bleep. I mean, when we were doing Sports Map Elite, he was just killing it. And I just started blind following because it gave me something to watch the golf on. And then I started trying to pick it up myself, and I've actually been doing a lot of golf now lately. But, I mean, oh, my God. I mean, his golf is through the roof. But no, the reality is, and I've always tried to say this from the time I was doing the show, the time I'm doing this, and everything else that we've done. And you and I have done a lot together over the last couple of years. It's not cut and dried. It's not, oh, I'm a genius. Look, I'm picking this, I mean, everything you have to evaluate. And so even like Canadian football, which I kill, there have been a couple this year that, I got lucky on. And so I'm right about 70% right now, which is a really good number. But if everything had played out the way it was supposed to, it'd be about 60%. Because I've gotten lucky a little. And I recognize that. Yeah. And you have to. And a lot of people just love to do the gambling for fun and entertainment. But, I approach it differently. And, the thing that hits me in the stomach the worst is when I'm completely wrong and still win because somebody thinks, hey, he knows what he's doing. It's like, no, I blew that one. And I'll try to tell people. It's just right. It's just one of those things. But anyway,
somebody asked you for a lock. I have people DMing me during peak golf season. They see, oh, I'm hitting 70% plus on majors betting. But when it comes to like course predictability, majors can often be the most profitable type of events to bet on. So the non-majors betting, we're still doing well, but it's not anywhere near 70%. That's an outlier number. I was talking to AJ Hoffman about that a couple months back about it. But what I will say is that when it comes to those types of betting things, like you want to use as much information as possible. So at the end of the day, I 100% agree. Someone asked me hey, Chris, what's your biggest lock of the day? I say, there's no such thing as a lock. Locks don't exist. But if you want to see the 15 things I am betting in my portfolio, and I'm betting 10 outright winners, and I'm betting 1 unit and breaking it down depending on what the odds are. So if one of those 10 guys hit, I'm going to get a 4-unit payout minimum. That's how I'm doing things. It's a portfolio. It's an investment like you talked about at the end of the day.
Yeah. And again, I don't mean to overdo the poker thing, but that's the best thing I've ever done in terms of gambling lessons and life lessons, frankly. You could do everything right and lose. You could do everything wrong and win. The difference is knowing that you did everything wrong or you did everything right. And once you do that, and I don't want to say it's easy now. I mean, it's always a challenge, but I can go sit at a poker table and I'm completely confident in everything I do because I've seen almost everything there is to see. And I know that, you know what? I may play this hand perfectly. I may think I'm trapping somebody with my pocket 5s and flop a set. Well, they got pocket 7s and flopped a set. Do I cry over that? No. It's just like, you know what? That's just a situation. I did everything right. He had a 2% chance of beating me. He did. And you just, you know, you don't, and it's stopped me from going on tilt. And that's another thing when we talk about gambling. It's easy to get on tilt in gambling too. You start losing and you start doubling down, you start doing all this stuff. You just have to follow the process and trust what you know and trust what you've learned. And if you do, you're going to come out ahead. And that's a hard thing for people to get sometimes. And I didn't mean to get too much into gambling here because I want to get back to fantasy football. But that's the truth. It's I mean, everything's a process. And the day I wake up and say, "Oh, I know everything there is to know about poker," or "I know everything there is to know about sports betting," put a bullet in my head because I'm lying my ass off.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, let's get back to fantasy a little bit. I got two things I wanted to ask you about. Let's start with this. Probably 8% of our listeners will have this problem, but you have the first pick in the draft. What do you do?
Well, first of all, it depends on your scoring format. If it's half PPR or full PPR, that means you get a point per catch, right? Justin Jefferson's unanimous number one. There's actually unanimous top 5, and I'm in the agreement with the market, so you can get my top 200 rankings. I update them every single day. They're for free right at the top of the bettingpredators.com website. So bettingpredators.com, check that out. Putting in a lot of work on those, doing shows on those position by position on our podcast feed as well. But Justin Jefferson 1, McCaffrey 2, Jamar Chase 3, Austin Eckler 4, Tyreek Hill 5. That's according to the industry analysts in terms of their average rankings. That's according to where people are drafting them by, and that's according to my rankings as well. I literally do not differ whatsoever on any of those 3 things when it comes to the top 5. If you're in a standard league where this is old school, no points per catches at all. This is how I grew up playing fantasy 10, 15 years ago. I say you can definitely make an argument for McCaffrey or Eckler in that top range. I would even go so far to say Nick Chubb could be a candidate for a top 3 pick in a standard league where you're not rewarding people for catching passes. So that's, I mean, Justin Jefferson, again, he's unanimous number 1. If you get the number 1 pick, you just take him, you move on. If he gets hurt, doesn't mean it was the wrong pick. It's just dumb luck. So that's as simple as that when it comes to number 1 overall.
Yeah, the last time I won this league that they screwed me on this week, I got Chubb, Eckler, and I got Jamar Chase in like the 6th round as a rookie because remember he was dropping every pass in practice.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and of course I just crushed them. So I mean, this is payback. It's okay. So the other thing I want to ask. So one of the things I like to do is find a rookie that's maybe a little under the radar. And, that you can get later in the draft. I think my guy this year, and hopefully none of these guys are listening, I kind of like Jordan Addison because he's had a bad offseason, but that guy is so talented. And Jefferson's always going to command a double team. So that's a guy I'm looking at getting later in the draft that could turn into something. And just curious on your thoughts on the rookies because I know Denzel Mims. I like Quentin Johnston a lot too, but I think he's going to go too high. And I think Dalton Kincaid is kind of a sneaky one too. That for a TE1 that I could get fairly late. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I for just in terms of rookies, like I love the unknown factor in fantasy. I want to draft based off the unknown. Like, what could this guy's ceiling be? And if I'm right, then, like you said, you're going to smash the rest of your competition. And that can be applied to all the rookie receivers you just brought up. Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, yes, but at the same time, unlike Addison's situation, Quentin Johnston has pretty serious target competition in the like Eckler, Mike Williams, and Keenan Allen. So Quentin Johnston's going to be a 4th option at best on his team. I think that best case scenario for Addison is that he's going to wind up being, second or third, right? Because TJ Hawkinson's there. But, in a perfect world, if all things go right, Addison could absolutely be the second target in that passing game, pretty high volume passing game there too. I will say also with Jackson Smith-Njigba, you talked about the public opinion overreacting to Jamar Chase dropping passes. I think the most recent example of that now is that Jackson Smith-Njigba just had to have wrist surgery.
Right.
He broke his wrist the other day in the preseason game. Reports are he could be back in 4 weeks, which is basically saying that he's going to be back by like week 2 or week 3 at the latest. So I don't think you should let him slip all too far. I still have him in my third tier overall, which is basically my wide receivers ranked wide receiver 16 to wide receiver 30. The upside is there. Like, everyone is so high on the Ohio State receivers that were rookies last year, right? Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. When they were playing with Smith-Njigba, he was out targeting them by a lot. So, earning targets are a massive skill when it comes to pass catchers in the NFL and in college. And yes, he has Lockett and Metcalf there, but the Seahawks were one of the pass heaviest teams in the league. And if they continue what they did last year, absolutely all three of those guys could be viable pass catchers. But Smith-Njigba has the biggest price discount. He's not getting drafted until the 37th receiver off the board. Same thing with Addison. He's going off the board as the 36th receiver overall. One guy, two guys actually, Zay Flowers. I really like this guy a lot. Rashad Bateman's been dealing with foot injuries now for multiple seasons in a row. They bring in Todd Monken, who's owner, founder of the air raid offense. Like, they've been talking about opening up the pass game a ton compared to what they were doing with that ground heavy focus with Greg Roman the last couple years. And then the only other receiver in that locker room is OBJ, who's had his own problems staying healthy.
Right.
Zay Flowers has come out the gates, first round draft capital. He's dominating the preseason. He's dominating training camp. I love him, and he's getting drafted as like the 46th receiver off the board. Zay Flowers is probably one of my favorites. He's probably my favorite receiver sleeper overall in terms of guys being drafted outside of the top 30 or 40 at their position. And one other guy I've been bumping up the ranks a ton because Jerry Jeudy just got carted off the field at practice yesterday. He might be out for a couple months, is the rookie Marvin Mims in Denver. Now, look, Sean Payton, this is his first year there. So even though they drafted Jeudy a couple years ago, they actually traded up in this year's draft specifically to draft Marvin Mims out of Oklahoma. This is a guy who's coming in. The strength of schedule in terms of fantasy wide receivers for Denver is 28th, right? So yeah, it's technically it's a tough schedule, but at the same time, you got guys like Cortland Sutton, Jeudy when he comes back. They're going to take away a lot of the attention in terms of opposing secondary. So I think Marvin Mims is a guy you definitely want to get some pieces of, and he's going off the board as like wide receiver 70. So I love the unknown. Dalton Kincaid, you mentioned him. I really like Sam Laporta for similar reasons out of Detroit. He was the second tight end taken in the draft this past year. So I love me some of those rookies this season, especially when it comes to tight end and wide receiver for sure.
Well, you get back to the Broncos. I mean, one thing that Sean Payton is great at is there's always a guy you're not talking about that becomes a monster, right? Whether it was Colston or any of those guys. And I think Mims could be that guy that just sort of comes out of nowhere and becomes your go-to guy. Even though they've got talent there, he just finds a way to pick one dude who opens up the whole offense for everybody else. And, I mean, that's why he's a brilliant coach. The other guy I kind of want to ask you about, and this one's a little close to me, so I'm not sure what to do with him. I know he's going to go way too high because, especially in the draft I'm in, it's all people from Houston, so they're all going to take Texans. Tank Dell has a chance to be a monster receiver. And, it's funny. I'm listening to these idiots on the preseason. It's, oh, what a revelation, Tank Dell. It's like, brother, I've seen every game he's played at UH. He's small, but this guy is explosive. He's a smaller Tyreek Hill, frankly, which you don't want to be much smaller than that. Incredibly fast, great hands, gets open like you can't believe. Now, I think he's going to have some struggles with press coverage because he is so small and guys are going to get on him and he's not going to be able to get off the line of scrimmage. But I think he'll figure that out long term. But I think this kid, and I'll be honest, I don't like CJ Stroud. I don't like anything the Texans have on offense other than maybe their offensive line. But this kid has a chance to be a really good player. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, that's my brother right there. We share the same last name. I got to get myself a Tank Dell. I can tell people I customize a jersey with my own name, and it's the Tank Dell jersey, man. So I love that. But no, in all seriousness, Tank Dell. I talked about. I just want to stress this when it comes to fantasy is that earning targets, like running backs, don't earn carries. Running backs get carries because of the situation that they're in. Right. That's why running backs are having such a hard time getting paid these days. And it's for good reasons because these owners and these GMs, they've caught up to the current state of the league. It's a passing league first. You can set up a good scheme and a good O-line and have success in the running game. You can't do that with receivers. So earning targets dating back to when these players are in college is a skill. And the number one thing that pops off on Tank Dell's college prospect profile is that he had a 30.8% college target share at Houston. That's 92nd percentile. So he's earning targets at a high rate coming in. People want to knock him because of his size. His draft capital, which is important when it comes to translating and predicting success from college to the pros, he was taken with the 6th pick of the 3rd round. That's a pretty high draft pick for a team that's looking to aggressively rebuild in the 3rd round to basically, hey, CJ Stroud, this is the first weapon we're going to go out and specifically handpick for you. If Dell takes over that slot role, you're talking about a lot of these easy, we call them layup targets in fantasy, like slot routes, short intermediate routes, hitch routes, things like that. Tank Dell, if he could lock down that role, and it sounds like he is so far based off the preseason usage, then you're looking at a guy who's definitely a viable fantasy wide receiver. I've been, just like I talked about with Marvin Mims, I've been bumping Tank Dell quite high up my wide receiver rankings. The last spot I put him at was the 62nd receiver off the board, right in the same range of guys like Odell Beckham, Darnell Mooney, Zay Jones, Kadarius Toney. So I'm 7 spots ahead of where he's getting drafted right now. But overall, I think that, yes, he can be a big value. Don't judge him based off just his size for sure.
Well, and I would also just say, I mean, having watched this kid for as long as I have, he has a nose for the end zone. He will be a red zone target, so he'll get you points that way. I just it's one of those things. When you're close to something, you can't quite judge it the same. And it's like, I love this kid, man. I mean, he got Clayton Tune drafted. Clayton Tune would never have gotten drafted if not for Nathaniel Dell. But
let me ask you a question, actually, because I'm curious to see how Houston treats this situation, because John Mechie also profiles as a slot receiver. He had the whole lymphoma situation last year, and now he's back healthy. He's looked pretty good in the preseason. I had a dynasty auction draft Sunday night, and I wanted Tank Dell, but I wasn't willing to pay the price on him in the auction. I wound up getting Mechie a few rounds later for just $1. Now, look, I think Dell is the much more exciting prospect. I wanted him, and in hindsight, if I could go back, I probably would have spent a few extra dollars to get him. But I am also curious to see, can Mechie and Tank Dell coexist in that offense? Because you got guys like Robert Woods, Noah Brown. Maybe it's Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and Mechie, and those are the 3 guys that wind up developing that first starter offense type of chemistry with Stroud.
Well, eventually, I think that's what you're hoping for, is that those 3 become your guys. I mean, Robert Woods is a solid, productive, professional receiver. He's never going to be a stud. He's not going to be a WR1, but he's never going to embarrass you either. He's the kind of guy that's going to get open, make plays. I think Mechie is interesting to me because at times I look at him and I see exactly what you're talking about. Oh, here's a guy who can play the slot. And at times I see a guy who can play outside. And then I also, he just doesn't yet. And he's one of those long-term investments. If we're talking about fantasy and we're going to draft him, we're not going to expect anything week 1, week 2. I think by mid-season, he's just not recovered yet. And that's a hard thing to get over, and very few of us know what it's like to go through that. Keep in mind, he also was coming off a devastating knee injury right before that. So we're talking about a guy who is not 100% yet. He will be maybe by midseason. And that's what you're investing for, right? You're investing for that guy the second half of the season who you look up and he's getting 110 yards and a touchdown every game. Because I think he could be that. But don't expect it right away.
Yeah.
Because that's and again, that's a hard disease to overcome as anybody. But let's not forget the knee injury, man. That's why he didn't play. And, Alabama was never the same after he got hurt.
Yeah, right. And it's funny, like, that's how good that he could have been that the Texans thought of him because he was coming off the injury, but he was taken in the early second round.
Yeah.
And he was earning the same college target share number I brought up for Dell. Mechie earned a 27% college target share rate at Alabama. That was 81st percentile, but that's almost the same, if not better, than what Dell did because Dell was doing that at Houston. Mechie was doing this at Alabama. 5'11", decent size. Like I think in a perfect world, like you said, like Noah Brown and Robert Woods, like at this point in their careers, like they're just kind of depth slot receivers. But if Dell locks up the slot, Nico Collins is kind of that X receiver. I think Mechie could be that kind of post-hype sleeper type of breakout. But I agree with you 100%. Like, if you've got an extra bench spot, stash them there, or just keep them on your watch list on waiver wire because, you forget how high we were on these guys, and a year goes by, they don't play. You forget all about it. I think he's definitely a name worth monitoring for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think Mechie in particular. I think by midseason, you might have something with him. And I think Dell will have some moments early, and then defenses will adjust to him, and then he'll have to adjust. But he's also the kind of guy that can take a slant and take it 80 yards, and you wind up with points off of that. And that might be the only play he makes all game, but guess what? For fantasy purposes, that's pretty good. But, I like Mechie a lot. I caution people to not get too crazy about him early. And then don't punt on him too early. That's a guy you're just going to have to wait on. And as I watch him, it's more than the other stuff. It's still the knee where he's not as explosive as he was. And
right.
I think he will be. It's just going to take time, man. We've seen this with knee injuries all the time. Some guys come back right away, and then you throw the leukemia on top of it, and you're like, wow, that's a lot to overcome. And that's why I think the value in him is he may not even go drafted in some leagues.
No, for sure. I agree with that. Yeah.
And so, that's a guy I think you could definitely grab and stash and by midseason. And again, a lot of what we talk about, listen, if my team's not in first place in the first 5 games, I don't really care. I'm going to be adjusting the whole way. And that's the kind of guy you can pick up and helps you win the second half, which is what you need. I want to ask you some Steelers questions because I love Pickens. I drafted him in a lot of leagues last year. Now that we're in year 2, how do you see this playing out with your Steelers?
Yeah, it's a good question. My biggest concern still is that the team was willing to bring back Matt Canada as the OC. And he's been behind some of those strangest offensive schemes and play calling strategies the last couple of years. Now, reports say that he kind of was having to do that based off what ownership was telling him, that they were like, hey, look, Big Ben's old. He can't really do much with his arm right now. So it's all going to be short passes and run the ball. Now, look, Kenny Pickett looks great in preseason right now. And I don't want to overreact too much to the preseason, but if you're looking for some type of a post-hype rookie quarterback sleeper going into his second year, I've actually started to come around quite a bit on Kenny Pickett because he can actually run the ball a little bit. And the chemistry with him and Pickens seems like it's on another level. So I do like George Pickens. My only issue with him is that the public loves him too. Like he keeps getting pushed higher and higher up the draft boards. I think I moved Pickens up to wide receiver 35. So I've got him right next to Deontay Johnson, right next to guys like Addison, Nico Collins, Brandon Cooks, Zay Flowers. Maybe I bump him up a few spots. I'm right in line with the market. I'm one spot ahead of the other industry rankers. I'm 2 spots below compared to the actual market where he's getting drafted. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't below market on Pickens because I do believe the talent is there and the situation looks to be improving. And if they continue to open up the passing game like they have been just in training camp, preseason, et cetera, then he's the type of guy with the college profile type of talent. He could finish as a top 15, top 20 guy pretty easily. Now, I do like Deontay Johnson a lot as a talent too. So I think a lot of this at the end of the day, it goes back to Kenny Pickett. What type of year 2 step can he take as a passer in this league? And will Matt Canada be willing to open up the offense and get a little creative with the play calling? Because look, as much as I love these like Sports Center highlight reel top 10 plays that Pickens makes seemingly every time he plays, like those highlight reel one-handed catches, like they're not winning us our fantasy matchups, right? Like you want guys catching slot, boring type of passes, getting 10, 15 targets a game, but Pickens isn't running those routes. Deontay Johnson's running those routes. Pat Freiermuth, who I love, he's one of my favorite tight ends in fantasy. He's running those routes. So that's my only concern. I'm right in line with the market. I love the talent. If he slips to me in a draft, I will definitely strongly consider taking him. But I still do similarly like Deontay Johnson. And if push comes to shove, the one Steeler I'm drafting is Pat Freiermuth. The second Steeler I'm drafting is Jaylen Warren because I think he could be due for a breakout season and surpass Najee as the lead running back on that team.
I love Pickens coming out of college because they didn't use him a lot at Georgia, but when they did, the guy beat everybody, right? And so, yeah, I invested a lot in him last year. I think he's an amazing talent. And, and the other thing, and you can speak to this because you're Mr. Steeler now. The Steelers draft a wide receiver in the top 3 rounds. I'm paying attention. They just don't miss. They're the anti-Ravens. The Ravens miss on every receiver they take. The Steelers don't. And like whoever's in charge of drafting receivers for the Steelers, I would hire in a heartbeat as my GM. So yeah, you just draft receivers and we'll take care of the rest of it. But I think they've got I think they got a monster in Pickens. I think he's going to have a terrific year.
Yeah, I can't argue with you on that one.
Yeah, see? Yeah, now that you're Mr. Steeler, you have to agree. All right.
Anybody watching from Pittsburgh right now, just cut me some slack, okay? I'm still a Bengals fan. I'm not going to be a biased Pittsburgh editor or writer coming in here. I don't know if I can ask you or anyone watching this, what jersey am I wearing right now? Cincinnati Bengals, number 32.
Is that Icky?
Tell me. Huh?
Is that Icky?
No.
Okay.
It's not Icky.
Okay.
That was before my time.
All right.
But if anybody can guess, or if you can guess, I'll have to give you a prize because no one can ever guess this jersey.
Is that what's his face who went to the Patriots, the running back?
You're talking about Corey Dillon?
Yeah.
No, not Corey Dillon.
Okay, I give up then. I tapped
a lot of people guess Cedric Benson. It's not Cedric Benson either.
Yeah, that's
my favorite Bengal player of all time. I won't spoil it now. No, it's Rudy Johnson. Rudy Johnson jersey. He had about 4 straight seasons. He rushed for 1,400 plus yards in the NFL. That was when Carson Palmer was in his prime. They had Chad Johnson, TJ Houshmandzadeh. Man, if Carson Palmer didn't tear his ACL in that wild card game against the Steelers, when I think they could have legitimately at least got to the Super Bowl that year. But we had to wait 15 years after that to get back to where we are now with Joe Burrow. But yeah, Rudy Johnson, man, that's my guy right here. I've had this jersey forever.
Rudy Johnson. Wow. Okay, that's
we had 3 Johnsons on it. So the back of this jersey has his first name, actually, because they had Jeremy Johnson, the fullback, Rudy Johnson, the running back, and Chad Johnson at wide receiver before he changed his name to Ocho Cinco. So this is the one, man. This is my good luck jersey right here, Fred.
Wow. Okay. Well, you know what? I only have one jersey left, Well, no, I have an Austin Matthews jersey because I'm kind of a Maple Leafs fan, but I have a Gary Carter Montreal Expos jersey that my ex-wife was in Montreal, and I told her I wanted something from the Expos. And one of the few things she did that wasn't, evil was she bought me a Gary Carter jersey. So I still have that. And I wear that at concerts sometimes when it's not 500 degrees like it's going to be tomorrow. It's like tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Tomorrow I'm wearing I'm going to pull out all my old school concert T-shirts, like bands you've never heard of, like Zebra. I've got The Offspring, I've got Judas Priest, and I've got Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, and I'm just going to change shirts every couple of songs because they're all T-shirts. But whenever I'm doing something during the winter, I always trot out the Gary Carter jersey. So,
someone, speaking of Carter, somebody in the comments here just mentioned Kajana Carter. That's an old school. I need to get me one of those, man. I have 3 Bengals jerseys in my closet. I just ordered 2 new ones recently. My partner on the Betting Predators podcast, Sleepy J, kept telling me, he's like, you got to get a new jersey. You haven't had a new jersey in like 15 years. I have the other jersey I have in my closet now. The old one is number 80, Peter Warwick. I got the Peter Warwick jersey still. That's my guy from Florida State. He's actually from Bradenton, Florida, where I grew up. And then Chad Johnson, before he changed his name to Ocho Cinco, that's the real Chad Johnson right there. But I just ordered a new Chase and a new Burrow, so I'm all good to go for 2023, man.
The other jerseys I have are all from the when I qualified for the World Series of Poker in 2006 with Poker Stars. They gave us like a rugby jersey, a hockey jersey, all this stuff. So I still have those, but there's no names on them. It's just Poker Stars. And then I have one from Full Tilt in 2008 when I qualified on there. So yeah, I don't have a lot of and even my Austin Matthews jersey isn't a jersey. It's just a T-shirt that has Leafs on the front and has Matthews 34 on the back. So,
yeah, when I was growing up, the basketball jerseys was the thing. Like, that was the style. Everyone in high school was wearing, and then people for like a year or two, they were wearing basketball jerseys backwards. I don't know if you ever remember that. People were wearing just jerseys purposely backward. Man, I miss those times. The only basketball jersey I have left in my closet is an authentic Orlando Magic Tracy Mother effing McGrady. That's right there, and T-Mac, baby.
That's badass. All right, so before we wrap it up, give the people 5 things to look for before they go into their draft. Just that we haven't talked about that are things you do.
Yeah,
or
man.
three, whatever. Just pick a fucking number.
Yeah, no. I got you. Well, what I will say is go to Post Gazette, post-gazette.com. It's the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette website. And, if you're not in Pittsburgh, you're not going to be hitting the paywall there. So you can get at least 5 articles for free. I've written 5 articles so far. Read the Fantasy 10 Commandments article, Fred. I'll send it to you so you can retweet it later. But I wrote it about a month ago, and it just kind of outlines like.
You sent it to me. I'll tweet it out. Yeah. You already.
Yeah. So the whole point of it is like, hey, like whether you're in a league with your buddies, whether you're in a work league, whether you're running a league as a commissioner, there's a lot of things that go into fantasy. And what I will say is that I had an interesting debate about somebody with this is like, what percentage of your draft is actually won or what percentage of your league at the end of the year is actually won by the draft? How much does the draft actually matter? I would go so far as to say 30% for me tops, because it's really all about the waiver wire. If you work the wire and if you have trades allowed in your league, like those are the 2 most important things at the end of the day. But, knowing your league format, like how many players do you have to start at wide receiver versus flex versus running back? What's the scoring format? How many bench spots do you have? Like how many IR spots do you have? Like just know your league settings top to bottom. I know it sounds like common sense, but a lot of people, I've been guilty of this myself. I get into like 10 leagues in 1 year. And I have one that the draft comes up all of a sudden. I'm busy and I don't look and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a standard league. And I thought it was a half PPR league. You got to be kidding me. My whole draft just goes to shit. So I will say Commandment 2, don't idolize players, only prices. Like you want to draft based off draft price and cost, not just based off the player name. and be flexible. Like, like you said with poker, take the information that comes in, digest it, and then adjust your strategy on the fly. And if you're playing in a half PPR, full PPR league, which is now standard on ESPN, is full PPR. Two things I love to draft when it comes to my quarterbacks: they need to be rushing quarterbacks. When it comes to running backs, they need to be receiving running backs that play on third downs, running backs that get the snaps in the 2-minute drill, in the no-huddle offense. Those are the ones like Eckler, like McCaffrey, but also maybe like a Jahmyr Gibbs, maybe an Antonio Gibson this year. Like, those are guys that could rack up a ton of fantasy points in a hurry. So make sure you're doing those things with those two positions, and I think you're going to be all right. And last thing I'll say, for those who are still in leagues, I abolished the kicker position, Fred, in all the leagues that I run about 3-4 years ago. There's no strategy behind it. Anyone who tells you there is, they're lying to your face. If you have to draft a kicker, do not do, or a defense for that matter, don't draft those two positions until the final 2 rounds of your draft. Like, if you take them any earlier, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. And in some of these apps where you draft, like, even if you have to start a kicker or a defense week 1, you don't have to draft them. Or if you do, right after the draft is over, drop the kicker, drop the defense, stash 2 running backs where their starter ahead of them over these next 2 weeks of practice might get hurt. And all of a sudden you got the biggest lottery ticket on the waiver wire, and you picked them up before we even played 1 week of football. So you want to churn those roster spots at the end of your benches, stash as many high upside, ceiling type of lottery ticket stashes that you can. And at the end of the day, one of those is going to hit. Maybe it's the next Alvin Kamara, and you're going to wind up winning your league or coming close to it at the end of the day. So those are some of my top things that I highlighted in the 10 Fantasy Commandments article, which you can catch on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette website right now.
All right. Well, I will tell you, assuming I get to draft tomorrow, when I win that league, I'll be hitting you up throughout the season. But when I win that league, you get 20%. So.
Hey, let me know when you're drafting. Do like a screen share of me. I'll help you make some of the picks if you don't have time, Fred.
Yeah,
I can be your ghost manager, man.
I think they're doing it early enough where it won't be a problem. But I'm just whining about it because I went out of my way to say don't make it the 26 because I don't know what I have to do early in the day over there. It's just sometimes it's stupid stuff like put the duct tape here for our VIP area, and stuff like that. But, it's such a great cause. I'm so proud to be a part of it and looking forward to it. But, yeah, I'm going to draft a good team, and then you and me will just, adjust as the year goes on. So, Chris, I really appreciate it. Guys, if you go read his stuff on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. He's doing fantasy there. He's in charge of the Steelers coverage. Betting Predators is still one of the best sites out there. I'm honored to be able to start writing for them here in a couple of weeks when the season starts, and I'll give you great shit, that, and it'll be awesome. But we're really we're going to work together and build Betting Predators into a monster. I mean, Chris has done such a great job with it, and we're going to go next level is the plan, and I'm going to try to do my small part to help. So. Anyway,
and one shameless plug right here, Fred, because I almost forgot. I would have kicked myself for doing it. Is check out bettingpredators.com. We just launched this past week. We have a 75+ page ebook betting preview that Fred wrote a special guest chapter on, and we're releasing our team by team chapters. Go check the website. We've got about 8 to 10 chapters up right now overall with the best bet and betting breakdown for each of those teams. I'm going to have my fantasy cheat sheets uploaded to the site, but you can also get my top 200 rankings there for free now. You can use those in tandem with whatever app you're drafting from for your fantasy drafts coming up. But check out the ebook. A lot of great stuff. There's like 35+ bets in there for the upcoming season, so make sure to hop on that. And within each team preview chapter, we also have a link to the full ebook if you want to read the Google Doc PDF version of it. So I'm super excited about that project, something we've been wanting to put out the last couple of years and haven't had the time. We were originally going to charge for it. We decided we wanted to give it out for free because of all the hard work the guys put into it. We wanted to give it as much exposure as humanly possible. So check the NFL betting preview book on the website. And yeah, Fred, the next Monday morning quarterback, even better than Peter King. I'm ready for it, man. Let's get it going.
Well, yeah, it's going to be Tuesday morning. I got to come up with a good name for it. But yeah,
Right.
I think I gave 4 season totals in that ebook. So I know the one that I like best is University of Houston over 4.5 wins. But I had 3 others in there. So please check it out. It's great stuff. And I'm proud to be a part of it, proud to be working with Chris. I mean, we've got a good history together, as you guys can probably tell. And lots of good stuff in the future, man. We're always looking forward. That's, and yeah, so check that out. All right.
Someone just asked in the comments, just bettingpredators.com, just like the movie Predator, bettingpredators.com. You can catch my rankings and all the ebook links on the homepage of that site.
Yeah, and Chris has been doing this for a while. It's not a new site. It's something he's built up. And like I said, we're, because we've all kind of been pushing in the same direction, we're going to work on this and together. And I guarantee you in a year, we're going to be bigger than U.S. Steel. But no, we're all going to work. We're all going to work together, and there's just so much great information there. It's time for us to get that out to the people and everybody else. So anyway, all right, that's going to wrap it up. I want to thank Chris so much. Always fun to work with you, and you'll be on again soon. Don't worry about it. And good luck with the Steelers gig, and especially wearing that Bengals shirt.
I'll try my best, Fred. Always a pleasure, man.
All right, just want to take a second to thank all the great sponsors of Falconcast, Lawyer Dave, Dr. Linville, the Phoenix on Westheimer. Please come out tomorrow night. You can see me flame out with a couple of girls I'm trying to date. And, Lanham Industries, all those guys, Pick Me Events. Please support them because they support us and let us keep doing these podcasts. So that's it. And I'll be back on Monday. I will have a couple of great guests for you. I haven't decided yet. Just depends on how stoned I am tomorrow night and who I invite on. But, until then, stay sportsy, Gulf Coast badasses.